Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Before you drift off to sleep, let me take you to a world full of wonder. A world where walls whisper, books breathe, and mirrors can show more than just a reflection. Tonight, under the quiet hush of evening, we return to Hogwarts. Not to practice spells or sneak beneath an invisibility cloak, but to uncover a mystery hidden deep within the dusty shelves of the restricted section. Imagine silent corridors lit only by moonlight, a secret room locked by ancient magic, and a double mirror, one that doesn't just reflect your face, but your future, a future not always kind. This story will take you on a journey beside a new character, joined by Ron, Hermione, and even Draco Malfoy. A slow, thoughtful journey, not only about magic, but about fear, choice, and the quiet courage to become your truest self. So take a deep breath, close your eyes if you wish, and listen to the tale of the mystery of the double mirror. Sweet dreams. I never meant to go that far. Hogwarts has always held a strange kind of pull over me. The walls whisper if you listen closely. The staircases creak not just because they're old, but because they move with purpose, always changing, always watching. Some students found it all overwhelming, even frightening. But I found comfort in the castle's secrets. Maybe that's why, that evening, long after dinner had been cleared and the corridors had quieted into their usual, cozy hush, I wandered into the restricted section of the library. Well, not wandered, exactly. I knew where I was going. It started with a book. Arithmetic Refractions, Mirrors and Magic in Predictive Divination, an obscure title, written in faded silver ink on cracked black leather. I hadn't even been searching for it. It slid halfway out of the shelf on its own, just enough to catch my eye. That should have been my first clue. There was something peculiar about the way it sat in my hands, almost warm, pulsing faintly. When I opened it, a small folded parchment fluttered out, its edges crisp, yet the ink looked ancient. The writing was jagged and cramped, as though scrawled in urgency. It was a map. Not of Hogwarts, not entirely. Just a portion of the library. But there, behind the usual stacks, behind where Filch had once threatened to hang students by their thumbs for snooping, there was a section I had never noticed. A tiny square labeled simply, Double Mirror. At first, I thought it was a joke. Maybe a prank someone left behind decades ago. But the moment I stood, book in hand, something strange happened. The candlelight in the library dimmed, and the shadows between the shelves deepened. The air felt still, expectant. It was too quiet to walk away. I slipped the map into my pocket and followed its winding path. Past the Latin grimoires, past the whispering encyclopedias that tried to talk over one another as I passed. I reached the last visible row, a shelf marked prohibited in dusty gold letters, and glanced over my shoulder. Empty aisles. Not even Madame Pance's shadow stirred. There was a narrow crevice behind a tall stack of books on magical time anomalies, exactly where the map had shown. No one would think to look. I pressed forward, shoulder scraping the edges until the crack widened just enough to allow me through. The room beyond wasn't much of a room. More like a forgotten pocket of the castle, a small alcove enclosed by stone walls, silent and untouched. A cold draft blew from somewhere above, even though there were no visible windows. My footsteps echoed quietly on the stone floor, muffled by a thick layer of dust. And then I saw it. The mirror stood in the center of the room, encased in a double frame, one inner ring of silver so bright it looked liquid, and another outer layer of tarnished bronze etched with symbols I couldn't recognize. It was tall, taller than me by at least a head, and curved at the top like an ancient cathedral window. It didn't reflect me, not at first. I stood there, inches away, expecting to see my own face. But the surface remained dark, almost cloudy. Not black, just obscured, like a veil of fog hung behind the glass. I leaned in. That's when it changed. A faint shimmer ran across the surface, like sunlight passing through water. And then, there I was. But not exactly me. This version of me was older. My hair was longer, darker, and tangled. My eyes looked hollow. I was standing in a place I didn't recognize, a hall of stone lit by flickering red torches. The ground was cracked. Rubble littered the floor. Behind me in the reflection, there were shadows, moving ones. I turned to look behind me in real life, but the room was empty. When I turned back, the mirror had changed again. This time, the me in the mirror was holding a wand tightly, too tightly, knuckles white. I was shouting at someone. At least, I looked like I was shouting. I couldn't hear anything. It was all silent, like a film playing behind soundproof glass. And then, suddenly, my mirror self cast a spell. An angry, violent burst of light erupted from the tip of my wand. Something exploded behind me in the vision. A wall? A person? I stumbled backward and tripped over a loose stone, nearly falling. My heart was pounding in my ears. What had I just seen? The mirror slowly returned to its fogged state, as if the moment was over. As if it had only wanted to show me one thing, one future. I wasn't sure how long I stood there. Maybe a few minutes. Maybe more. Time felt thick in that room, like it moved differently. Eventually, I found the strength to leave. I backed out of the alcove, carefully pulling the tall shelf back into place as if hiding the entrance would hide what I'd seen. But the image stuck with me like smoke in my lungs. I couldn't stop seeing my own face twisted in anger. I couldn't stop hearing the imaginary sound of the spell, though I hadn't truly heard it at all. Back in the common room, everything felt too normal. The fire crackled peacefully. Someone laughed in the corner. My dorm bed was warm. The stars outside the window sparkled, indifferent to whatever magic I had just unearthed. And still, I couldn't sleep. Even as I lay there with my eyes closed, I felt that cold draft, that eerie pull, that sensation that I had witnessed something I was never meant to see. A future that may, or may not, be mine. No one ever tells you how heavy secrets can be. Especially secrets wrapped in fog and silver, hiding behind ancient symbols. I didn't tell anyone the next day. Not Ron. Not Hermione. Not even Neville, who always had a comforting way of listening without judgment. I wasn't ready. Not yet. But I knew one thing with aching certainty. The double mirror wasn't just reflecting light. It was watching me. And somehow, I felt it wanted me to come back. I tried not to go back. Really, I did. For a whole day, I avoided the library altogether. During charms, I caught myself glancing out the window too often, thinking about the mirror. During Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall asked me twice to repeat what she just said. I answered wrong both times. At lunch, the mashed potatoes tasted like dust in my mouth. And that night, when the castle grew quiet again, I stared at the canopy of my four-poster bed and convinced myself that I had imagined the whole thing. But the problem is, you can't unsee something like that. And you can't unfeel it either. The image of myself in the mirror had burrowed deep into my mind, like a seed of doubt planted in dark soil. A version of me that looked more like a stranger than a reflection, cold, unrecognizable, and dangerous. The way that version of me held a wand, the way the shadows crept behind me like they belonged there, it felt like a warning. Or worse, a promise. On the second night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I found Hermione and Ron in the common room, both huddled over a board game of wizard's chess. Hermione wasn't even pretending to enjoy it. Her eyes kept drifting toward the open book on her lap. Ron was losing, as usual, and arguing loudly with his rook. They looked safe. Familiar. I envied that feeling more than I wanted to admit. "Can I talk to you both?" I said, quietly. Ron looked up mid-argument, raising an eyebrow. "Everything all right?" "Not really." Hermione immediately closed her book and made space on the couch between them. I sat down, suddenly unsure of how to begin. The fire crackled gently, casting orange light across the floor. The wind outside the windows had picked up, whistling faintly. For a moment, I almost changed my mind. But then I said it. "There's something in the restricted section." "A mirror." Hermione tilted her head slightly, curious. "What kind of mirror?" I don't know. It's called the double mirror. It's hidden behind one of the shelves in this little stone room. I found a map in an old book. I followed it. And when I looked into the mirror, it showed me something. I paused. Ron leaned in a little. "What kind of something?" I licked my lips. "A future. Maybe. Or a possibility." I saw myself, but not as I am. I was older. Angrier. And everything around me was broken. The mirror, it's not like the mirror of Eps. It didn't show me what I want. It showed me something I never want to become. Hermione's eyes sharpened immediately. She was no longer just curious, she was concerned. "Did it speak to you? Did you touch it?" "No. It didn't speak. It just watched. And when I looked, it looked back. It felt alive." Ron gave a low whistle. "Blimey. That doesn't sound good. I mean, at least the mirror of Eps was just depressing. This one sounds cursed." Hermione stood up, already heading toward the bookshelf. "We need to look it up. There has to be something about it in the restricted archives. If it's magical and hidden, it's probably dangerous." She pulled out 3 dusty volumes before I could even react. That was Hermione's way, knowledge before panic. I appreciated that about her. It helped me breathe a little easier. We stayed up late flipping through pages. Ron dozed off with a book on his chest somewhere around midnight. But Hermione and I kept searching until, finally, she found a reference in an obscure index of magical relics. Speculum duplex. The double mirror. A cursed artifact once used by the unspeakables in the Department of Mysteries. Said to reflect dual potential futures, one shaped by fear, the other by choice. Highly unstable. Last recorded in the Hogwarts restricted archives during the headmastership of Armando Dippet. I reread the passage 3 times. So it shows 2 futures? I asked, hopeful. Hermione frowned. Not always. It can choose what to reveal. Some say it feeds off uncertainty, off fear. If you're at a crossroads in life, or doubting yourself, it might amplify that and reflect the worst path. Like a warning, or a manipulation. Perfect, I muttered. So it showed me that because I'm messed up? She gave me a sharp look. No. It showed you that because it wants you to believe you're messed up. Don't let it. But it was hard not to. That face, my face, but not really mine. It lingered in the corners of my vision all day. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't go back. I'd just carry on like usual. I'd go to potions, pretend to care about Snape's sneering remarks, listen to Hagrid ramble on about bowtruckles, and try not to think about cursed mirrors. But fate, or Hogwarts, had other plans. As I was heading down to lunch, I passed by the entrance to the library. And standing right there, as if he'd been waiting for me, was Draco Malfoy. His arms were crossed. He had that smug look he always wore when he thought he knew something no one else did. Well, he said smoothly. Been spending a lot of time in the restricted section, haven't you? My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything. He stepped closer. You think no one notices when you sneak around at night? You think the castle doesn't talk? He knew. Or at least, he knew enough. What do you want, Malfoy? I asked quietly. Oh, I don't want anything, he said with a smirk. But I do want to see what scared you so badly you looked like a ghost for 2 days straight. I turned away. But then he said something that made my blood chill. I heard it shows you your true self. I stopped. You know what I saw when I looked into it? Malfoy continued, stepping around to face me. Power. Me, standing in a place no one could touch me. Even the Dark Lord looked small compared to what I could become. He smiled. But it wasn't a nice smile. And then I thought, if that mirror showed me that, what could it possibly have shown you to make you look so terrified? My fists clenched. He leaned in a little closer and whispered, Want to go back together? Or are you afraid of what else it might show you? I walked away. I didn't look back. But something told me that wouldn't be the last I'd hear of him. Not with that mirror still standing, still watching, still waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. The shadows on the wall looked too much like the ones in the mirror. And the worst part? I wasn't sure anymore whether I was afraid of what I'd seen, or afraid that some part of me wanted it to be true. The third night was the hardest. It was as if the mirror had left a door open inside me, one I couldn't close no matter how many times I tried to distract myself. I went through my day like I was moving underwater, drifting between classes, barely speaking unless I had to. Even Ron had stopped trying to crack jokes to pull me out of it, which said a lot. That evening, after dinner, I told myself I would go straight to the dormitory. No library. No secret corridors. No mirror. And yet, when my feet reached the 7th floor corridor, I turned left instead of right, out of sheer habit. My hand brushed the rough stone wall beside the fat lady's portrait before I realized I wasn't going back to Gryffindor Tower at all. I was headed toward them. Toward the only people who might understand. Hermione and Ron were still in the common room, curled up on either side of the fireplace. Hermione was deep into a book as thick as a brick, her lips moving silently as she read. Ron, as usual, looked like he was trying very hard to pretend he wasn't dozing off mid-chess match. One of his knights poked him in the arm with a tiny sword to wake him. "I can't stop thinking about it," I said without even sitting down. Both their heads turned toward me immediately. "The mirror?" Hermione asked, already closing her book. Ron blinked the sleep out of his eyes. "You went back?" "No. But I wanted to. It's like it's in my head now. I close my eyes and I see it. Not the reflection, just the feeling. The weight of it. I don't even know if what it showed me is real." Hermione patted the cushion beside her. "Sit. Let's talk it out." I sank into the spot between them. The warmth from the fireplace helped, a little. But not enough. Ron leaned forward, brows furrowed. "You said it shows possible futures, yeah? But what if it's not your future at all? What if it's just, I dunno, magical nonsense? Like divination?" Hermione shot him a look. "Divination isn't nonsense, Ron. It's just temperamental. And the double mirror isn't about predictions. It's about paths." "Exactly," I said. It felt like it was showing me where I'd end up if I kept going the way I am now. "And you don't like where that is," Hermione said gently. I hesitated. "No, I don't. But the thing is, I don't even know what I'm doing wrong. I thought I was trying my best. I don't want to become that person I saw. But now I can't stop wondering, what if I already am? What if I'm closer to that version of me than I thought?" Silence fell between us for a moment. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. Ron finally spoke up, his voice unusually serious. "Look, mate. I've known you a long time. You're not some power-mad lunatic. You're you. You stress out over exams, you apologize when you bump into chairs, and you once cried because a baby thestral sneezed. You're not the person in that mirror." Hermione smiled at that, and so did I, faintly. "I think," she said, "the mirror plays off your fears. It magnifies them. You said yourself, it showed you the worst. That doesn't mean it's the most likely. You're still in control of your future. The mirror can't make you anything. Unless I let it, I had it." She nodded. "Exactly. I don't want to go back. But part of me does." Hermione didn't look surprised. That's how these kinds of artifacts work. They plant a hook. They make you question yourself. That's why it's hidden in the first place. Ron looked thoughtful for a second. What if you went back, but with us? Would that help? My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't expected that. You'd do that? Of course we would, Ron said, almost indignant. We've faced cursed objects before. One more won't kill us. Hermione looked more cautious. We have to be careful. The magic might respond differently with more than one person present. But, yes, I think we should see it together. A strange mix of relief and anxiety washed over me. I hadn't realized how much I didn't want to be alone with it again until now. We made a plan to return the next evening, just after dinner, when the corridors would be quiet and Madame Pants was most likely locked in her quarters with a pot of tea and a stack of banned romance novels she'd never admit to owning. That night, I slept slightly better. Not because the thoughts went away, but because they weren't only mine to carry anymore. The next day passed slowly. My mind drifted during class, and I barely touched my lunch. By the time the sun dipped below the mountains, I was already pacing near the library entrance, hands tucked deep into my robes, fingers twitching with nervous energy. Ron and Hermione arrived a few minutes later. Ron had a look of grim determination on his face. Hermione carried a small satchel filled with protective charms and parchment. We slipped through the library doors without a sound. Navigating to the alcove felt easier this time, though my heart still raced. My fingers brushed the spine of that same dusty book, Arithmetic Refractions, and sure enough, the hidden gap in the shelves was still there, just wide enough to slip through. The air inside the secret room felt colder than I remembered. The mirror stood exactly as I'd left it. Tall. Still. Watching. Hermione was the first to step closer, squinting at the carved symbols around the bronze frame. She muttered under her breath, words I didn't recognize, likely protective incantations. Ron hung back, clearly uneasy. What do you want to do? He asked me. I swallowed hard. I just want to see if it changes with you both here. If what it showed me before was just for me. I stepped forward. The mirror flickered again, just like before, shimmering softly as if waking from sleep. Slowly, the fog within its surface began to shift. And then it happened. This time, my reflection showed not one, but 3 figures. Me, Ron, and Hermione. We looked different, older, yes, but also together. Standing strong. Bruised, maybe, but alive. United. Then the image flickered. Suddenly, the background changed. We weren't together anymore. I stood alone in a ruined hallway, just like before. My friends were gone. My face twisted with rage again, magic crackling at my fingertips. And then, it blinked again. The 2 images alternated rapidly. One, a path of loyalty, of friendship. The other, of isolation and destruction. Back and forth. Back and forth. Until finally, the surface returned to mist. My breath shook as I stepped away. Ron exhaled slowly. Well, that was bloody terrifying. Hermione didn't speak. She looked shaken, but composed. It showed both sides this time. Just like the text said. dual futures. That means it's responding to your doubt, but also to your hope. Which means, I still have a choice, I whispered. Hermione nodded. Exactly. I looked at the mirror one last time. This time, it didn't feel like it was pulling me in. It felt quieter. Like it had said what it needed to say. We left the alcove in silence. Not because we were afraid, but because, for the first time, we understood. Not all magic is meant to be wielded. Some is meant to be witnessed. And then, left behind. If there's one thing I've learned at Hogwarts, it's that secrets never stay hidden for long. Even the ones tucked away behind ancient bookshelves and stone walls. Even the ones guarded by silence and fear. Especially those. I should have known the mirror wouldn't be content to just linger in that forgotten room forever. It had tasted something, attention, doubt, fear, and dark magic has a way of reaching out for more. I could feel it in the air after our second visit, like static before a storm. The castle was listening. And someone else had started listening too. It began the next morning. Draco Malfoy was waiting outside the Great Hall when I arrived for breakfast, leaning against the column like he'd been planted there overnight. His robes were perfectly pressed, his expression perfectly smug. "Sleep well?" he asked as I tried to pass him. I didn't respond. "Funny thing," he continued, falling into step beside me. "I heard you weren't alone last night. Granger and Weasley tagging along, was it? Curious what they saw?" I stopped. "You've been spying on me?" He smirked. "Please. Hogwarts has eyes everywhere. I just know where to look." There was something sharper in his tone than usual. Less teasing, more deliberate. I narrowed my eyes. "What do you want, Malfoy?" He tilted his head slightly. "What I want is to understand what you're so afraid of. You saw something in that mirror. Something you've been trying to forget. But I think it might be exactly the thing I need." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "I went to see it," he said, voice low and smooth. "After you. After your little emotional meltdown in the hallway. I wanted to know what could possibly rattle someone like you. And guess what? It didn't frighten me at all." He stepped a little closer. It showed me something glorious. A chill ran down my spine. "What did you see?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he let the silence stretch out, like he was savoring it. "I saw power," he said finally. "The kind of power no student should have. The kind of power most professors can't even dream of. And unlike you, I didn't flinch. I didn't run. I shook my head. It's not real. It manipulates what you want. It shows you lies." "Lies?" he repeated with a laugh. "Then why did it show you something to be afraid of?" I clenched my jaw. "Because I'm not stupid enough to chase it." Malfoy's smile widened. "No," he said, turning away. "You're just stupid enough to fear it." He disappeared into the Great Hall, leaving those words hanging behind like smoke. I barely touched my breakfast. The porridge tasted like glue, and even the smell of pumpkin juice made my stomach churn. Hermione noticed immediately. "Malfoy again?" she asked. I nodded. Ron groaned. I swear, he's got a sixth sense for bothering people. Hermione leaned closer, voice lowered. What did he say? He saw the mirror, I said. He went in after us. And he claims it showed him power. That he liked what he saw. Hermione's face darkened. That's not good. No kidding, Ron muttered. If there's one person who should not be empowered by a cursed magical object, it's Malfoy. Hermione looked thoughtful. We need to find out more. About the mirror and what it's capable of. If Malfoy's been affected by it, if it's feeding on his ambition, it could get worse. I didn't want to admit how much I agreed with her. The look in his eyes that morning, he'd always been arrogant, sure. But this was different. This was belief. Dangerous belief. Later that day, while Ron and I were stuck in a double-length potions class, Hermione snuck back to the library. She returned to the common room that evening with her satchel practically bursting with books. I found something, she whispered, her eyes bright with discovery and dread. Ron and I leaned in as she spread an old, worn volume across the table. The title was nearly rubbed away, but the pages were lined with handwritten notes in ink that had faded to brown. It's a record from an old Hogwarts caretaker, Hermione explained. He kept notes on all the magical objects stored in the castle, especially the dangerous ones. She flipped to a page marked with a crimson ribbon. There it was again. Speculum duplex. The entry was longer than the others. The double mirror has proven more dangerous than previously believed. Initial assumption, it merely reflects potential futures. Further observation suggests it influences them. Exposure to the mirror induces obsessive behavior in those of ambitious or uncertain temperament. Subjects return to it repeatedly. Some have described the experience as euphoric. Others report increased paranoia, nightmares, hallucinations. Must be sealed. Dumbledore disagrees. Says it should be studied, not buried. I say he's mad. Hermione sat back. So it doesn't just show futures, it guides them. Or maybe even creates them if someone believes in it enough. Ron let out a low whistle. That's bad. It's worse than bad, I said. It means Malfoy's not just obsessed, he's being shaped by the mirror. He probably doesn't even realize it, Hermione said softly. He thinks he's in control. But he wasn't. And neither was I, not really. Because even as we spoke, even as we learned the truth, I could feel it. That pull. Not to go back, but to prove it wrong. To stand in front of it again and not see the monster it had shown me. To rewrite the reflection. To look and not be afraid. But that, I realized, was exactly how it worked. It wasn't just a mirror. It was a question. A temptation. A door you couldn't help but open. I need to stop him, I said suddenly. Ron and Hermione looked up at me. He's going to keep going back. He thinks it's giving him strength. But if we don't do something, it's going to ruin him. Or worse, he might try to use what he sees. Hermione nodded slowly. We could talk to a professor. No, I said. Not yet. If we go to them now, they'll close off the room. Maybe even destroy the mirror. But that won't undo what it's already done to him. Ron looked skeptical. And what's your plan, then? Confront Malfoy and talk about your feelings? I cracked a smile despite myself. Not exactly. But the truth was, I didn't know yet. I just knew that he was in deeper than he realized. And I had to reach him before he slipped into whatever version of himself the mirror had promised. It was strange, caring about Malfoy like that. I wasn't sure I'd call it empathy. Maybe it was just the mirror again, showing me what could happen. What any of us could become if we gave it too much of ourselves. But whatever it was, I knew one thing. This wasn't just about what the mirror showed anymore. It was about what it wanted. And what it wanted, most of all, was to be believed. The next few days passed in a strange sort of limbo. Classes carried on, students came and went, the bells chimed their usual tune, but beneath it all, I felt the tremble of something rising. Like footsteps echoing from behind a closed door. And I knew it was Malfoy. He wasn't being subtle anymore. I noticed him watching people more closely, listening in places he never lingered. There was something calculating in his posture, a sharpness that hadn't been there before. He seemed emboldened, like someone who had seen the future and liked what he saw. It worried me more than I could say. Hermione was still buried in her books, trying to find references to the mirror's origins, its enchantments, anything that might help us understand how to weaken its influence. Ron, though he didn't say it aloud, was itching for a more direct approach, something involving a well-timed jinx or maybe tossing the mirror out a tower window. But I felt something different pulling at me. Something quieter. Heavier. It was time to talk to Malfoy. I didn't tell Hermione and Ron. Not because I didn't trust them, but because I didn't want them to try and stop me. And I didn't want this to become a group intervention. I knew Malfoy well enough to know that he'd never respond to anything that felt like a trap. So I waited. I chose the astronomy tower just before curfew. It was usually empty by then, and Malfoy had been going up there more frequently, whether to be alone or to feel closer to whatever destiny he thought the mirror promised him, I didn't know. But I had a hunch. And sure enough, when I reached the top, I found him. He was leaning against the stone parapet, looking out over the grounds. The moon cast silver over his pale features, giving him the ghostly look of a boy pretending to be a man. He didn't turn when I approached. I figured you'd come eventually, he said. The wind was gentle up there, carrying the scent of pine and distant water from the Black Lake. It made the moment feel too calm for what was brewing beneath our words. I stepped closer, hands in my pockets. You've been visiting the mirror. He nodded, still facing away. I have. And it's magnificent. I frowned. It's manipulating you, Malfoy. Feeding you illusions. He laughed softly, without humor. Illusions? Maybe. But that doesn't make them meaningless. You don't get it, do you? For the first time in my life, I see what I could become. Not what my parents expect. Not what the professors whisper behind their hands. Me. Pure, raw power. Control. A future where I'm not second to Potter, not overshadowed by some war I was too young to fight. I leaned on the stone beside him. That's not power, Draco. That's fear. The mirror shows us what we think will give us control, but it's a lie. I've seen what it does to people. I've seen what it nearly did to me. He finally turned to look at me. His eyes weren't full of rage or even the usual sneering contempt. They were hollow. "I'm not afraid," he said, quietly. "Yes," I said. "You are. And that's okay." He flinched at that. Just a tiny movement. But I saw it. "You don't know what it's like," he said. "To feel like every step you take is someone else's. My father's name, my family's politics, my own bloody house, none of it was ever mine. And now, I finally have something that is. Something that's using you," I said. "You think it's showing you a future where you win, but what it's really doing is showing you the one where you lose yourself." His jaw tightened. I didn't stop. "I know what I saw," I said. "I saw a version of myself that was cruel. Alone. Drenched in power but starving for connection. And I realized something. If I kept chasing strength just to silence my fear, I'd become that version. I'd choose it." "And what did you do?" he asked, voice sharp. I walked away. He stared at me for a long time, like he was trying to decide if I was lying or just naive. "I don't think I can," he said at last. "Yes, you can. Even if I wanted to," he continued. "I think it's too late. It's in my head now. It's like I need to see it again, just to make sure I haven't lost what it showed me. Like it's slipping away unless I own it. That's what addiction feels like," I said. He stiffened. But he didn't argue. I stepped back, giving him space. The wind stirred again, and in the silence between us, I saw a flicker of the boy underneath the mask. The one who didn't know how to ask for help. "You're not alone, Draco," I said, surprising even myself with the sincerity in my voice. "Not unless you choose to be." He looked down, hands tightening on the cold stone edge. "I keep thinking," he said quietly, "what if the mirror's not wrong? What if that's the only future I can make for myself? The only one I'm strong enough to reach? Then let us help you find another one." He looked at me, really looked, for the first time in what felt like years. And for a moment, something in his expression softened. But it didn't last. His face hardened again, his walls going up like castle gates. "I don't need your help," he said, and turned away. I didn't stop him. Sometimes, people don't change because we ask them to. Sometimes, they have to come to the edge themselves, look down, and choose not to fall. I left the astronomy tower with a strange heaviness in my chest. I hadn't saved him. Not yet. But maybe I planted something. A hesitation. A seed. When I returned to the common room, Hermione and Ron were waiting. "How did it go?" Hermione asked. "He's still in it," I said. "But he's scared. Whether he admits it or not." Ron folded his arms. "So what now? We wait?" "I think we prepare," I said. "If the mirror is pulling at him that strongly, it's not going to stop. And we can't let it grow stronger." Hermione frowned. "What are you thinking?" "We seal it," I said. "Not destroy it." Hermione was right. It's too dangerous for that. "But we lock it away. Completely. the way it should have been in the first place. Her eyes widened. That would require a containment charm stronger than anything we've learned. Which is why we do it together. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll start researching containment magic. The old kind. The kind they used in cursed vaults. Ron sighed. And I'll make tea. We all smiled, just a little. That night, I didn't sleep well, but it wasn't the same kind of unrest. It wasn't fear this time. It was anticipation. A sense of movement. Like something that had been standing still was finally starting to shift. I didn't know what Malfoy would do. Maybe he'd go back to the mirror. Maybe he'd give in. Or maybe, just maybe, he'd remember the look in my eyes when I told him he wasn't alone. And maybe that would be enough to bring him back. Hogwarts had always felt like a place of both mystery and safety. A castle where shadows whispered behind tapestries and secrets hid in stairwells, but somehow those same walls had always felt protective. As if the very stones would hum gently to reassure you that no matter what darkness lurked beyond, you were still home. That feeling was fading. By the time the weekend arrived, something in the air had changed. It was subtle at first, the odd chill in classrooms, the way candles flickered more than usual, the way even the ghosts drifted a little faster down the corridors as if they were in a hurry to be somewhere warmer, safer. But to those of us who had stood before the mirror, who had seen it, who had felt it, there was no mistaking the cause. The mirror was growing restless. And Malfoy was slipping further into its grasp. Hermione had been working furiously, eyes heavy with exhaustion, muttering incantations under her breath as she pored over volumes so ancient their pages crackled like dry leaves. Ron stayed close to her, mostly fetching books, occasionally dozing off with his head on a stack of them, and sometimes asking if maybe punching Malfoy would work as a backup plan. I, meanwhile, found myself staring out the common limb window far more often than I should have, watching the castle lights flicker across the lake, wondering if Draco was already back in the hidden room. Wondering what he was seeing this time. Wondering what version of himself the mirror was offering him now. By Sunday evening, I couldn't wait any longer. We go tonight, I said quietly, sitting across from Hermione and Ron in the corner nook by the fireplace. Before it's too late. Hermione looked up from the runes she was sketching onto a scrap of parchment. Are you sure we're ready? I nodded. We have to be. She tapped her quill nervously. I've managed to adapt a containment charm based on the one used on cursed vaults in the early days of Hogwarts. But it'll only work if the mirror is stationary and undisturbed. If Malfoy's in the room when we try to cast it, he could interrupt the binding. Or worse. Ron gave a half smile. Right. So, simple break in, confront the most annoying Slytherin in this school, and lock a cursed object before it eats anyone's soul. Basically, I said. He shrugged. Sounds like a typical Sunday. We moved after curfew. The hallways were quiet, shrouded in long stretches of silence broken only by the occasional creak of the castle settling. I kept one hand on my wand, the other brushing the edge of the parchment map Hermione had managed to cobble together from the caretaker's journal. It wasn't a full Marauder's map, but it showed enough. Enough to get us back to the hidden door behind the arithmancy shelves. When we reached it, the air around us was colder than it should have been. Hermione whispered the unlocking charm, and the stone door groaned open like something exhaling stale breath. We stepped through, one by one, and the passage closed behind us, sealing us in shadow. The room hadn't changed. Not much. The dust still hung like gauze in the air. The air was heavy with age. The books that lined the walls had not moved, though some seemed to lean ever so slightly toward the center of the room, toward the mirror, like flowers straining toward light. And there he was. Draco Malfoy stood in front of the mirror, hands curled tightly at his sides, shoulders trembling, not with fear, but with tension. Like he was trying to hold the reflection in place with sheer will. He didn't turn when we entered, but he spoke. "I told you," he said, voice strained and quiet, "you wouldn't understand." "Draco," I said, stepping forward. "You don't have to do this." He laughed softly. "That's just it. I do. Because it shows me, you see? It shows me the only version of myself that matters. Not the puppet. Not the coward. Not the boy in his father's shadow." He finally turned, and his eyes were red-rimmed, wild, with exhaustion or magic or both. "It shows me him. The version that wins." Hermione stepped forward, one low, voice gentle. "Draco, the mirror doesn't love you. It doesn't want anything good for you. It wants to feed on you. That version it's showing? It's not real." "But what if it is?" he snapped. "What if it's the only part of me that is real, and the rest is just leftovers? Fear and guilt and blood I didn't choose?" "We all have those parts," I said. "But we don't become them. Not unless we let them take over." He hesitated, and for a moment I thought he might walk away. But the mirror shimmered. We all saw it, light curling outward from the frame, flickering like heat off a flame. And Draco's head snapped toward it, eyes wide. "No, no, wait, don't go," he whispered, stepping closer. "Draco!" I shouted. "Don't!" But the mirror was already pulsing, a low-hum building in the stone beneath our feet. Hermione acted fast. She raised her wand and shouted the containment incantation, ancient words that echoed against the walls, too large for the room. Runes glowed in the air, circling the mirror's base like a cage of light. But the mirror fought back. The image within it twisted. I saw movement, shapes that looked like us, but wrong. Ron gritted his teeth beside me, his wand out, his free hand bracing Hermione's shoulder. Draco screamed, not in pain, but fury. "You're ruining it," he roared, lunging toward the mirror. And I moved. I didn't think. I didn't weigh my options. I just moved. I grabbed Draco's arm mid-step and yanked him back. He struggled against me, wild-eyed, stronger than I expected. But I held on. "You don't want this," I said, voice trembling. "I know you don't." "I do," he cried. "I have to." "No, you think you do. Because it told you that you're nothing without it. And that's the lie. That's how it traps you." He stilled. The hum was rising, louder, harsher. The mirror cracked, just a hairline fracture along the left edge. Hermione cried out, "Now!" She and Ron both cast the final binding charm in unison, and golden bands of magic exploded outward from their wands, wrapping the mirror in light. It wailed. Not a sound, but a vibration, a sorrow so deep it nearly knocked me off my feet. Then, silence. The mirror went dark. No reflection. No light. Just a still, cold pane of silver. Draco collapsed to his knees. We stood in stunned quiet, breathing hard, the light of the spell still fading around us. Hermione sank against the wall, clutching her wand with shaking hands. Ron put an arm around her, both of them staring at the mirror like it might come alive again at any moment. I knelt beside Draco. He was staring at the stone floor, hands limp at his sides. "It's gone," he whispered. I nodded. "It is. I thought it was me. The one I was meant to be." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're more than what any cursed mirror says you are." He didn't answer, but he didn't pull away either. We left the room in silence. No one spoke as we retraced our steps through the library, past the sleeping shelves and ancient tomes, back into the waking world. Back into ourselves. And as the door closed behind us with a soft thud, I looked back one last time. The mirror stood alone in the darkness, caged in runes and silence. But even still, it shimmered faintly at the edges, like a dream waiting to be remembered. Or forgotten. It had been 3 days since we sealed the mirror. 3 days since the silent room behind the library had been closed off once more, its hidden door buried under layers of charm, caution, and something heavier, something like sorrow. But I still heard it in my dreams. Not the mirror itself. There were no flashing lights, no ghostly voices. No visions of futures waiting to swallow me whole. No. It was subtler than that. It was the sound of Malfoy's voice, cracking as he pleaded for a reflection not to leave him. It was Hermione's panicked whisper as she begged the containment charm to hold. It was the hush that fell over us all the moment the room went dark. And somewhere beneath it all, a hum. A quiet, steady hum like an echo trapped beneath glass. I didn't tell the others about the dreams. Not yet. We were all trying so hard to move forward. Hermione buried herself in her studies again, but now with a different edge to her focus. I caught her rereading parts of the ethics of enchanted objects and cursed relics, the conscious and the dangerous, lips tight, as though she were trying to understand how anyone, could allow something like the double mirror to exist in the first place. Ron seemed to bounce between bursts of relief and unease. He joked more, louder than usual, but his eyes lingered on the shadows longer too. I think he was still trying to shake the image of the mirror's reflection, what it showed him, what it almost tempted him into believing. As for Malfoy, he hadn't spoken to any of us since that night. We saw him in the Great Hall once or twice. Sitting alone, pushing food around his plate, face pale and unreadable. He didn't look angry anymore. He just looked tired. Dimmed. Like something inside him had turned inward, folding in on itself. And maybe that was grief, I thought. Not for the mirror, but for the piece of himself he believed was real, and now had to let go of. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't finished. It came to a head on a rainy Thursday evening. I was in the courtyard, beneath the covered arches, watching rivulets of water trail down the flagstones like tiny rivers when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting maybe Hermione or Ron coming to pull me in for dinner. But it was Malfoy. He stood there, his cloak already damp from the rain, arms crossed tight over his chest. "You were right," he said. His voice was quiet. "Hello." I blinked. "About what?" He looked down. "About the mirror. About what it does." I nodded, slow. "I'm glad you see that now." "I hate that I see it now," he said bitterly. "Do you understand? I hate that I ever wanted what it showed me." He stepped closer, not angry, but intense, like someone unraveling too fast. "It was perfect," he whispered. "That version of me. Powerful. Respected. Feared. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone. People just listened. I didn't feel small. I didn't feel wrong. I didn't say anything. I let him talk. He needed to. But it wasn't real," he said. "It was a trap. A shiny, perfect lie." He let out a long breath, and for the first time in a very long time, he looked human. Not the swaggering boy who teased in corridors. Not the cold, condescending Slytherin prince. Just a boy trying to find himself in the ruins of a dream. "I can't stop thinking about it," he said. "Even now. Even though it's locked away. I still want to see it again." "You're not the only one," I said. He glanced up sharply. "I dream about it," I continued. "Not every night, but enough. I think maybe part of it stays with us. Afterward." He looked away. "Do you think it's always been there? That mirror?" "Maybe," I said. "Maybe someone tried to hide it because they knew how dangerous it was. But Hogwarts is full of things that shouldn't exist. Sometimes they just wait long enough for someone desperate enough to find them." "Sounds like something Dumbledore would have said," Malfoy murmured. I managed a tired smile. "Probably." We stood in silence for a while. The rain softened, drumming gently on the stone roof above us. Then Malfoy spoke again. "I want to help." I looked at him, startled. "With what?" "Whatever you three are planning next. I know you're not just going to pretend this never happened. Hermione's reading more than usual. Ron's twitchy. And you've been walking around like you're expecting the mirror to whisper your name." He paused. "Let me help you contain it for good." I studied him for a moment, waiting for the punchline, for the trademark smirk, for the catch. But none came. Only sincerity. Awkward, raw, but real. "I believe you," I said. He looked relieved, and maybe a little scared. Later that night, back in the common room, I told Hermione and Ron everything. Hermione listened with a furrowed brow, lips pressed tight, clearly thinking several steps ahead. Ron looked like I just suggested we invite a blast-ended squid to dinner. "Are you sure we can trust him?" Ron asked. "He's not the same," I said. "He wants to do something different now. I think he's seen what the mirror would have made of him, and he's trying not to become it." Hermione nodded slowly. "Then we should let him try." Ron groaned. "Fine. But I'm keeping my wand on him." The next day, we met in the room of requirement. Hermione had chosen it because of the way it responded to need, because it would let us experiment with protective enchantments without prying eyes. Ron had charmed a set of practice mirrors to simulate magical resistance, and I'd drawn out a map of the hidden rooms so we could plan where to reinforce the containment spells. Malfoy arrived last. He didn't speak much, but he listened, asked questions, practiced the incantations Hermione showed him. And when it was just the four of us standing around a flickering training mirror, Malfoy pointed his wand and spoke the sealing charm as firmly and clearly as any of us. The mirror dimmed, and we all exhaled. By the time this session ended, the four of us stood in a loose circle, tired, weary, but united. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Malfoy said quietly. "Not for what happened before, or even for this. But thank you for letting me try." Hermione gave a small nod. Ron didn't quite meet his eyes, but he muttered, "Just don't get weird again." Malfoy smirked faintly. "No promises." As we left the room, I found myself thinking that maybe, just maybe, the mirror had given us more than fear. Maybe in stripping us bare, it had shown us something we hadn't seen before, the pieces of ourselves we still had the power to shape. And perhaps that was the point all along. Not what the mirror showed, but what we chose to do after we turned away. It was strange, the way something could happen right beneath the surface of a place like Hogwarts, and no one would know. No one would believe that four students, wandering well past curfew, had sealed away a cursed mirror that could show terrible futures, or terrible truths, depending on how you looked at it. And maybe it was better that way. Maybe some secrets were meant to be quiet, like ripples disappearing into the lake. But even so, something in me had changed. A month passed. The leaves turned golden, curling at the edges before dropping from the trees like old parchment. The castle smelled of wet stone and spiced pumpkin, the windows fogged in the mornings, and Hagrid had already started pulling out heavier coats for the thestrals. Classes returned to their usual rhythm. Professor Flitwick assigned charm work too advanced for sleepy students, McGonagall grew sterner by the day with exam season looming, and the ghost of Sir Cadogan continued challenging portraits to duels in the West Wing. Life went on, but I couldn't stop glancing at reflections. In windows, in the surface of my tea, in the still water of the Black Lake, I would catch myself looking, searching, expecting something. A flicker, a shimmer, a version of me that wasn't quite me. It never came, and yet I kept looking. Hermione noticed, of course. She always did. One afternoon in the library, while we sat among scattered textbooks and the soft scratch of quills, she glanced over and asked gently, "You still feel it, don't you?" I didn't pretend not to know what she meant. I nodded. She sighed, closing the ancient volume she'd been studying for arithmancy. "I think it's going to be like that for a while. For all of us. Even you?" She gave a small, sad smile. "Especially me. It's hard to let go of what might have been, of what we saw. But maybe that's part of the lesson." I leaned back in my chair, watching dust dance in the golden light filtering through the windows. That we have to live with what we saw? No, she said. That we get to choose what we become, even after seeing it. I thought about that for a long time. Ron, meanwhile, had taken to treating the whole thing like a slightly weird dream he'd half forgotten. He still made jokes about Mirror Malfoy and asked if he looked like a handsome millionaire wizard in the reflection. But sometimes, when he thought no one was looking, I'd see him staring at his own reflection in a classroom window, jaw tight, like he was daring it to move. And Malfoy? He changed the most of all. Not dramatically. He still rolled his eyes when Ron talked. Still walked with that same careful swagger. But it was lighter now. Less like armor, more like habit. And sometimes, just sometimes, he didn't seem to mind sitting with us. He never asked about the mirror again. Never mentioned it. But once, in potions, I saw him hesitate before glancing at the polished side of a cauldron and quickly look away. And I knew he hadn't forgotten either. We all bore the mark of it. It wasn't a curse, exactly. But it wasn't something you left behind like a lost sock in a dormitory either. The mirror had touched us, and some part of us had touched back. It was only after another quiet week that Hermione came to me with an idea. "We need to bury it," she said. I blinked at her over breakfast. "The mirror?" She nodded, voice low so no one around us could overhear. "Magically. Symbolically. We sealed it, but it's still there. Waiting. I've read about enchanted binding rites. If we perform one in the room of requirement, it could help break the mirror's link to us." Ron glanced over, toast halfway to his mouth. "You mean, like a mirror funeral?" Hermione gave him a flat look. "In essence." "I'm in," I said quickly. We didn't tell anyone else, not even Professor McGonagall. Some things weren't meant for the grown-ups. Some things had to be done by the ones who lived it. The room of requirement welcomed us like it remembered our need. This time, it appeared as a long chamber lined with soft candlelight, ancient stones, and a single archway at the far end. In the center, a replica of the mirror. Not the real one, Hermione had made sure of that, but a placeholder. Something to represent the echo of what we'd seen. We stood in a loose circle, the four of us, me, Hermione, Ron, and Malfoy, wands in hand. Hermione stepped forward first. "I bind the reflection I saw," she said softly, voice trembling a little. "The path of fear, the hunger for control. I let it go." Light curled from her wand like golden thread, weaving around the mirror. Ron was next. "I bind the version of me that wanted the easy win, the glory without the work. I'm more than that. I let it go." More light, silver this time, spinning into the first. I followed. "I bind the future I feared, the darkness I thought might be true. I choose what I become. I let it go." The thread turned blue as it joined the others. And then Malfoy stepped forward. He didn't speak at first, but his hand didn't shake. His voice, when it came, was steady. "I bind the lie I believed, the version of me that needed to be feared to matter, the part that thought power was the only way to be free. I am not that mirror." The light from his wand was pale green. Together, the threads encased the replica. And then, at Hermione's signal, we lowered our wands. The mirror cracked, not violently, not dramatically. Just a soft, delicate line running down the center, like a smile after sorrow. Then the room dimmed. The mirror vanished. And the air lifted. We stood there a moment longer, just breathing. Then Ron said, "Well, that was weirdly beautiful." Hermione rolled her eyes, but she smiled. Malfoy didn't say anything. But as we turned to go, he paused beside me. "You know," he said quietly, "I used to think that power was everything. And now?" He glanced back at where the mirror had been. "Now I think it's choice." I nodded. "That's where the real magic is." He gave a soft, dry laugh. "You sound like Dumbledore." I smiled. "I'll take that as a compliment." We parted ways at the staircases. Hermione and Ron headed toward the common room, and I lingered by the landing for a while, watching the flickering torches. The castle felt different now. Not safer, exactly. But older. Wiser. Like it had seen us through something and was watching to see what we would become next. I caught my reflection in the window beside me. Just me. Tired, thoughtful. A little braver than before. I didn't look away, because I knew that the version of me in that reflection was the one I'd chosen. Not the one from the mirror. Not the one shaped by fear. But the one shaped by friendship. By truth. By the courage to walk away from what might have been and into what could be. The mirror was gone, but I was still here. And that, I realized as I turned and climbed the stairs, was enough. More than enough. Of course. Here's the closing passage in a calm, introspective, and bedtime tone designed to leave the reader in a peaceful state of mind. And now, the mirror is gone. The echoes have faded. Only the quiet remains. You've walked the shadowed halls. You've seen fear take shape in silver glass, and watched it lose its power. Under the gentle light of truth, friendship, and choice, the library sleeps once more. The dust settles. Books hum softly in their dreams. And somewhere deep beneath Hogwarts, a locked door rests undisturbed. Not because the mystery is forgotten, but because it is understood. You carry no curse. Only the memory of what was overcome. Only the strength you found in the quiet. And that is enough. So breathe slowly. Let go of the echo. Feel the warmth of safety wrap around you. Like a soft, invisible cloak. You are home. You are safe. You are more than any reflection. Sleep well, brave soul. Until the next story finds you. Good night.